Special thanks to Horizon Therapeutics for sponsoring today's Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Working tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics' mission at horizontherapeutics.com.
But then when he pushes through, and it's a beautiful thing, and he's just this, and the things that he would type, and the words and the wisdom. And my point is that his impact on me, but then his impact on so many other people that have come in contact with him through this whole journey, through Piece of Heart and through Special Nation. There's so many things. It's remarkable.
That's our guest this week, Mitch Gardner. Mitch and his wife Ellen have 4 children, including 14-year-old Davis, who has severe autism and is nonverbal. We'll hear Mitch's story, including his work with the Piece of Heart Autism program and Ellen's work with the Tim Tebow Foundation. That's all on this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Say hello to David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, Fathers Mentoring Fathers of Children with Special Needs, presented by the Special Fathers Network.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we'd be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad.
And now let's listen in on this conversation between Special Father Mitch Gardner and David Hirsch.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with Mitch Gardner of Jacksonville, Florida, who's the father of 4 and Vice President of Business Development at RevMed Group, a company that partners with medical clinics to improve outcomes for patients and economics for the practices. Mitch, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
You and your lovely wife, Ellen, have been married for 16 years and are the proud parents of 4 children, Donovan 4, Daxton 7, Drew 13, Davis 14, who has autism and is nonverbal, and Joanne 25, who you and Ellen fostered from her age 15, who herself has a 4-year-old son, Jace. Sadly, Joanne's mom was a police officer who took her own life. Let's start with some background. Where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
I grew up in Pensacola, Florida. Personally, I'm an only child. My mom more or less raised me, through my early years, and my grandparents played a significant part in raising me as well. As I got a little bit older, we lived with them from time to time. But yeah, my wife, Ellen, she grew up here in Ponte Vedra, where we live now, way before all the lore of TPC. But she grew up here with her 3 sisters, her mom and dad, and they're all still here. And that's when I moved to Jacksonville. That's when I met her.
Excellent. So I'm sort of curious to know, what did your dad do for a living?
So Dad was a jack of all trades kind of guy. Didn't go to college. I mean, he kind of did a number of things. Ended up, he drove trucks, worked for FedEx, but could also drive a forklift. I mean, he just kind of did all kinds of different things. My dad's an awesome man. There was a period of time there where early years was not as involved, up until about age 8. But he came back and was really involved. And my dad and I are very, very close. And in fact, we're going to spend some time this weekend together with all the kids, and we do that quite frequently. So,
well, thanks for sharing. And I think that part of what you're referring to, just for clarity, is that your parents divorced when you were quite young. So I'm sort of curious to know, how would you describe your relationship with your dad?
I revere my dad and love my dad because of his heart, his character, his integrity. We are genuinely close, and I'm grateful for that, because I do have friends that kind of grew up with my situation and they resent their father. And I am so grateful that I don't have that feeling or that sensation in my own heart, because I think it would also play itself out with my kids. And I've worked very hard to ensure that doesn't happen. So.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. Yeah, and I'm wondering if there's an important takeaway, a lesson that you learned from your dad that sticks with you.
Yeah. One is my dad, if you knew him, and my stepmother, who they've been married now for 36 years. When I was 8, he remarried, and their relationship, their love, I dare use the word cute. They are as cute as they can be. I mean, they genuinely love each other so much, and they have just such they just, it's unconditional, and it's a precious love. I don't know how else to put it. On the flip side, my mother is just about as amazing as I know of a woman to be. What she did for me and continues to do for me and my family, I mean, she's unbelievable. But definitely struggled on that relational side, with choices, right? And so what I've seen from my dad and learned from my dad on that front, from a love and marriage, etc., it's just been so. To answer your question, that's a huge one. I think the other aspect is, on the flip side of that, would be that like I mentioned, I alluded to earlier, worked very, very hard to ensure that my kids didn't grow up with the same environment as I did, right? My parents wanted nothing but the best for me, but based on their decisions and choices, divorce and the ugliness that comes with that, and the frustration with each other and finances and all that stuff, I didn't want my kids to endure that. And I also wanted them to have an involved and hands-on father. So I know my dad struggles mightily with the things that he missed out on. Not all necessarily his fault, but as a result of the decisions that were made. And I know it kills him inside. And I hate that. It hurts me to know that he struggles with that. But those are things that I've learned from him, that not only do I not want for my own kids, but I don't want for their kids. And so how can I help them learn from me, learn from him, et cetera, et cetera.
So from what I remember, you went to the University of West Florida and you played baseball. And I'm wondering, where did you think your career was taking you, and where has it taken you?
I was blinders on right out of high school, all things baseball. Lived, eat, breathed baseball. Went on to play, ended up going to University of Auburn in Montgomery for a year, and then finished up at West Florida. But all of that to say, I definitely was pursuing baseball in a way that I thought it was going to be my life, right? As life would have it, there were some things that occurred. Some of it was just recognition of, you're only so good, buddy. And there's some people that are a lot better than you. And so when I was done with ball, ended up going down the sales path.
I'm sort of curious, how did you meet Ellen?
I was in Jacksonville, Florida, coming from Orlando, spending time for a weekend with some friends. And so we were at the Lemon Bar for a couple of beverages, and I went to tab out and turned around waiting on them to close my tab. And there was this beautiful woman standing there, very classy dress, was clearly not there for all of the festivities that were going on. And she was just so striking. And I told myself I had to speak to this lady. And so I proceeded to go over and simply tell her, I'm not trying to hit on you. I just want to tell you, I think you're beautiful. And that's all I got. Not very eloquent at all. But thankfully, as I went to walk away, her best friend, Brandy, grabbed me by the arm and said, "Where are you from with that accent?" And I said, "LA." It just came out. And my now wife, Ellen, immediately said, "My dad is from California and he doesn't sound anything like you." And then I said, "No, Lower Alabama." And thank God they thought that was hysterical. So the rest of the night, we ended up talking and just learning about each other. And at the end of the night, I asked her, could we hang out again? Could we go on a date? And she said, "Well, I have 2 questions for you. Tell me about your faith, and who'd you vote for in the last election? I was like, oh man. And it was pretty easy, in truth. I said, you know what? I do and always have loved Jesus. He is the center point of my life. And honestly, I'm ashamed to say I didn't vote in this last election. But had I would have voted for Bush. And so she was good. Then I don't even know if it was so much the responses, but the fact that I was willing to be that transparent. I know that she appreciated the faith part because that has definitely been a center point of our marriage, for sure.
Well, thank you for sharing. That's a wonderful story. And I'd like to talk about special needs, first on a personal level and then perhaps beyond. And I'm curious to know, before Davis's diagnosis, did you or Ellen have any experience with special needs?
No, neither one of us. There was some distant, maybe a distant cousin of Ellen's, but outside of that, really nothing of significance to speak of.
Okay. Yeah, and out of curiosity, how did the diagnosis come about, the autism diagnosis?
Yeah, so when we moved to Tallahassee, Davis was meeting all of his milestones. We recall, and just to be clear as a disclaimer, we are not anti anything, relative to vaccines and all that stuff, but we have an opinion about that. That's for another conversation. But what we noticed was Davis was not well for one reason or another. But at that time, he went in for his vaccinations. And after that moment, within 24 hours, he was completely different. No eye contact. All he did and wanted to do was sit and watch Little Einsteins over and over and over again. And just his demeanor, just everything changed. The verbal cues, the communication that was occurring and progressing completely shut down. There were no words. There were no mumblings. And so clearly we recognized that something was terribly wrong. So we went and saw our pediatrician at that time in Tallahassee. They maybe thought that it was something to do with the transition of having a new sister. And we'd only been in the Tallahassee area for a short period of time. So maybe that transition as well was a double transition. And so then the move to Pittsburgh occurred. And some of those behaviors and things really just worsened on some level. And so we brought in some folks, specialists, et cetera. And after the diagnosis or after their diagnosing, he was given that diagnosis of autism.
Okay. Well, it sounds very sobering, right, to learn of the diagnosis. And while it might not be directly related to the vaccines, there seems to be a question, about the role the vaccines played in the diagnosis or his situation. And I'm wondering if you could put yourself back at that point in time again, Mitch. What were the concerns or fears that you and Ellen had at the time?
I'm an optimist to a fault. I get often joked with about being a rose-colored glasses kind of guy. So there was aspect of me that was like, you know what, we're going to get through this. He's going to be fine, because in truth, I, like a lot of dads, I think, had visions of my son being similar to me, playing baseball and throwing with my son and teaching him how to do certain things. And those were things I don't think I was willing to let go of. And as a result was in denial, quite frankly. And it affected Ellen and I, the way that I grew up, right? And I shared that with you. I had this vision in my head of what normalcy and a marriage and wife with kids was going to look like. And I didn't want that to be broken or different than my initial vision or thoughts around that. And in fairness, I think for her too, Ellen's just more of a realist, and she's just more pragmatic in how she looks at things, and was like, we need to start taking steps today to address this. And my take was, well, he's going to grow out of this. We're going to get around this. He's going to be better, blah, blah, blah. And then she was like, one way or another, he still has challenges and we still need to address them. We need people who are smarter than us to come into our lives and help us understand, how do we tackle this thing? So I know that's a lot. And to be honest, just to even hear myself say it out loud, it's just crazy to know that we were there. And I will tell you, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that when I look back on those moments, David, there is no way. And I've shared with you our faith and just how critical that is to us. And oh, by the way, we had this beautiful little baby girl this whole time, right? So she's there. She's a baby. She's beautiful and the cutest little thing. And she's in all of this. There's no way that we would have kept our marriage together and certainly been whatever fraction of a parent that we were for these kids. It wouldn't have happened without our faith.
So I'm wondering if there's been a turning point, something that, has really helped Davis.
Yeah, I'll try and summarize this as best I can. It's been such a journey, but when Davis was 8 and we had moved back to Jacksonville from DC, some folks came into our life through church. Some of the folks that we know have a daughter, have children that are same situation as Davis, a little bit older. They brought some folks into town that were really involved in facilitated communication through devices, getting nonverbal folks to communicate. And so Ellen, my wife, took Davis with their daughter, the Rochelle's, Amy and Howard, their daughter Gentry. So before I say it, quick note, until this point, Ellen and I both more or less thought that Davis cognitively operated at about a 2-3-year-old level, really didn't understand what was going on, certainly. And so I say that because we would talk about Davis and his circumstances and his behavior right in front of him because he couldn't communicate with us directly. We didn't think he knew. None of it would have an impact on him. So I say all of that because when he typed for the first time and literally said, "Thank you for unlocking my voice," I don't, first of all, to be honest, we thought it was a hoax. We literally thought this was some sick joke. I mean, you can just imagine this whole, your whole life with this child and everything that we saw and dealt with. And he typed, first of all, how did he know how to spell? How did he know how to communicate something that wise and then like all these things, like how did he know how to push the but like all of those things were going through our head. And then this flood of, oh my God, he's that smart. He's that, what have we said? What have we done? And I mean, it just, the overflow of like grief, like we like had to mourn our past self and forgive ourselves of how we treated Davis and spoke to Davis. And it was as beautiful of as a moment it was one of the hardest, most painful moments. It shredded us, both of us. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. You're not the first person that I've heard, and particularly dads in the network, refer to something like facilitated communication or just providing their son or daughter with the ability to communicate and how overwhelming it is, right? And, we ought to all assume that our children understand, regardless of what their circumstances are, and then let them prove us wrong, as opposed to like what you just described, which is, this overwhelming field of guilt or however you describe it, and regret, right, for not, believing, right? And maybe it goes back to what you were talking about, your faith, right? You had a little bit of a loss of faith, right, in your son. And maybe this was something that, helped spur you back to the center of your faith and believing that, hey, let's be better. Let's be the best parents we can be. Let's not make any assumptions, negative or otherwise. So again, thank you for your transparency and sharing. It's very powerful. So not to focus on the negative, but I'm wondering what some of the bigger challenges you've encountered.
Yeah, we always thought that Davis was, because he growing up, he's just always been very gentle and very, I don't know how else to put it, obedient. He complies, but as he grew, he's a big kid. I'm roughly 6 foot. He's like, and he walks on his toes. So when he's on his toes, and he always is on his toes, he's like 6'1", or roughly, and he's 14. He's a big kid. And so what has occurred over the last few years is heightened aggression, really some severe behavior that as a child, as a small adolescent, was more manageable. But as he's gotten bigger, it becomes arguably dangerous. Ellen dealt with some really questionable moments with him and became not only worried for herself, but we have young boys. And at that time, they were really young. But during those periods, he was very unstable. So all of that's occurring, and it's like, and then he went into this really dark place when we moved to this house where he wouldn't come out of the room. He would go to school, but he was pulling the hair out of his right here out of his head, and he would eat it, and he was just doing a lot of things, and it was so dark, such a dark time, in addition to the aggression. And so we didn't know what we were going to do. A longer, bigger story around some folks that we're involved with, a Special Nation that my wife helped to create with this special needs community through our church. Certainly meeting people and recognizing there's a need for community, but also they had a vision and a goal to open a group home, open up many group homes, and do it in a way where perceived competence was there, maybe an opportunity to communicate, et cetera, et cetera. Fast forward, it happens. God would have it. Peace of Heart was created. Initially was going to be a girls group home. I chair the board for the organization. All of that was all sidebar stuff. And we had talked about, man, it'd be great if one day we could have a boys home that would replicate, or it'd be a duplication of Peace of Heart, but for the boys. Well, as, favor would have it, we got a phone call from Amy, and she said, we got an approval, and we decided that we want to make this, because of the way the house is built and structured, there are two sides. We want to make it multi-gender, and we'd like to ask you and give you first right of refusal for Davis.
Oh, wow.
And we were like, back to the whole, never thought we'd be here, even considering a group home for our son, certainly not at the age of 13 at that time. So here comes another flood of, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Are we good parents? So all those emotions and all those things. And so we decided to at least consider a few weeks of him being there and just seeing how he handles it. And he ended up typing, which was kind of sealed the fate of that decision. Basically, in summary, he said, I am now receiving freedom. I get to grow up now. I get to go kind of spread my wings, if you will, is what he communicated to us. So one of the hardest things we've ever done, we still talk about how Davis isn't here. And that's had an impact on my kids, on my daughter. My daughter still struggles with why her brother's not here. They were like basically twins, they were together all the time. But then my little guys, my 7-year-old always talks about his brother Davis, who he really doesn't engage directly with, but he's always thinking about him. And he talks to his teachers about Davis, and he wonders how his brother's doing, and will his brother know he loves him? He says things like that.
Well, it sounds like quite a journey, and my heart reaches out to you and Ellen with the path that you've charted. And it sounds like Davis is in a good place, right?
Yes.
The aspect of independence isn't something that all individuals with autism are aware of, and it's obvious that he is aware of having some independence, and that's an important thing. And you're respecting that, and it's the solution today. it might not be the long-term solution.
That's right. Yes.
And if it's working, I think that this is God's way. And, if it should change or something should evolve to be different than it is today, you'll cross that bridge when you get there.
Well said.
And I think one of the most important takeaways, Mitch, is that you're not just parents to one child, even though Davis has taken up more of your time and energy just because you're the parents to 4 children, right? And you have to look to the well-being of everyone in your family, you and Ellen, as well as all of your children. So that balancing act is not a straight line. Here's the book. This is how you do it. It's a work in progress. And I think that you guys are doing an exemplary job. So one day at a time, that's all we get anyway. And hopefully you'll continue to make the best decisions for everybody involved.
Amen. Thank you.
So there's some supporting organizations, and I just want to make sure that we don't overlook anything. You made reference to Special Nations, and I know that Ellen had something to do with the creation of that. What is it? What is it today?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, when we would travel around and we would go to different churches, and unfortunately they didn't have the resources to support our needs and our circumstances with Davis. It obviously it was heavy on us. And Ellen, I just remember specifically in Pittsburgh, she would always say, I just can't believe there's not something out there where moms, families can engage, and there's community to be able to talk about what we're going through, what we're dealing with, and then do it in a way, in an environment where obviously, ideally, there's some faith components and you can get into that. But even if there's not, just a community of like-minded special needs parents. So fast forward, as God would have it, put it on our heart. Awesome pastor at Redeemer Church in Ponte Vedra, Florida, and Sean Yost. And Sean said, we'll make it happen. What do you need? And so it started with 2 families and turned into over 50 families, many of whom are affected by autism, but some who are not, who are, Down syndrome or a number of other unfortunate developmental type circumstances. So today it's still going. Ellen's mother and father took over supporting the organization and lead it today. So it's been great.
So under the banner of additional supporting organizations, I remember you talking about Jill's Place when you were in McLean, Virginia.
Sure.
And what role, if any, that's played in your family?
Yeah, I think Jill's Place, when we were in D.C. and we attended McLean Bible Church, Lon Solomon was the head pastor, and his daughter Jill, forgive me, I don't know specifically the diagnosis for her, but she was affected by autism, but she was paralyzed. She always had a permagrin. She had a smile nonstop and still does. But they built this amazing building called Jill's Place that is at the time state-of-the-art facility with PT, OT, a gym, and they had all of these individuals that were the best in the area and basically offer respite, overnight care for children affected by whatever their condition was, so that the parents and their typical siblings could either, as married couples, go out and do married couple stuff for a day or two, or take your typical siblings and go do things that you can't do today because of other things that go on at home with your affected children. So that was remarkable to us, because it was like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if there was that kind of an outreach everywhere? So that certainly also played into the special nation component for Ellen. But I think it also opened the door to, just that idea of, if you're not taking care of what's going on at home, if the nucleus of the family, the mother and the father, the typical children that don't, because there's so much focus and attention unintentionally, but necessary, on the child affected, there's so much that's not given at times to, or not enough left in the tank to give to the other children. And I think it definitely helped us realize that we cannot forget, first of all, us. We have to be good. You and I have to be good, Ellen. And then from there, we've got to ensure that we're not forgetting about these other beautiful children.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. I'll be sure to include some information in the show notes about Special Nation as well as Jill's Place. And I'd like to talk briefly about your family's experience beyond your personal experience and a little bit about the Tim Tebow Foundation, which is where Ellen works. And I'm wondering if you could share with our listeners what the Tim Tebow Foundation is and what Ellen's role is there.
Yeah, so hopefully anybody listening might know who Tim Tebow is, but he was a
baseball player, right? No.
Yeah. Well, yes, he is a big he is a baseball player, but more widely known for his football prowess. If you don't know who he is, I encourage you to go look him up. So I won't get into that, but he created this foundation. I mean, the beautiful thing about Tim is his heart. You know, his father, his parents, missionaries for growing up in the Philippines for so many years, and Tim being a part of that, and just not only from a faith perspective, but just a desire to impact people in a way that's just uncommon, and just to have a heart for people. And because he's been blessed and had so much favor financially, he wanted to do more with his money. Again, having an impact on others to the best of his ability. And so, you know, there's a number of different ministries that he has. I encourage you to go check out TTF. But one of the big ones, as many people know about, is Night to Shine. One night a year, all over the world, special needs children of all facets show up, red carpet treatment, and it's kind of like a prom or, you know, just an amazing celebration of them as real human beings, kings and queens, as Tim would say. It's a dance. They get crowns or tiaras, and they're just celebrated for one night a year. And it's pretty special. So as a result of all of that, and I shared about Special Nation and Ellen's vision through all of these things with Davis, and because as much as Davis's circumstances have been so hard for Davis in a way that I can't fathom what he deals with every day. What we have always known is that Davis's impact, like my impact on Davis as a father, is fractional beyond fractional of his impact on me. Like, he's taught me so much in his behavior, just things that he's overcome and how he's managed through all of this stuff. And he's fought, and like when he has his moments and he struggles with his behavior, and he'll type that he's so ashamed of his behavior. He calls himself a monster sometimes, and he's like, I want to get out of this autism body. Like, but then when he pushes through, and it's a beautiful thing, and he's just this, in the things that he would type and the words and the wisdom. And my point is that his impact on me, but then his impact on so many other people that have come in contact with him through this whole journey, through Piece of Heart and through Special Nation. There's so many things. It's remarkable. So all of that said, who would have known, who would have thunk that Special Nation would have been created? Two, that as God would have it, 3 or 4 months ago, Ellen, through COVID, Ellen's thinking, maybe I should go back to work. And wouldn't you know it, someone forwards her a job description that looks like she wrote it. And that was the first thing I said when I read it. I was like, this literally looks like your nomenclature, like even. And it was for the Tim Tebow Foundation, for a ministry called Shine On. Long story short, Ellen applied. Obviously, when they heard her story, and they came to Piece of Heart even, and they saw the beauty that has occurred. And as a result of Special Nation, there's also been a school created and all these wonderful things. She obviously got the job, and that's what she's doing now. She is building what is going to be Shine On for Night to Shine, ideally launching soon after Night to Shine. And then, we'll see what God does from there.
Well, thanks for sharing. The Tim Tebow Foundation does amazing work. From what I remember, there's the Night to Shine in something like 720 different locations. And the fact that it is one night, which is a really special experience for all these families, not only the young individuals who are being treated as the kings and queens, but it's a meaningful experience for their parents and their siblings as well. It is just one day a year. And I remember when we got involved advocating for kids and dads super early on, there's just one day a year that, we sort of recognize dads, on Father's Day, arbitrarily the third Sunday of every June. And I remember one of the teachers, because we have this monster essay writing program that more than 400,000 kids have participated in locally, said, we need to move fatherhood from a one-day experience to a year-round experience. Mm. And that's what I heard you saying, which is we'd like to move the experience from Night to Shine, from a one-day experience to a year-round experience. And I think that's what Shine On is all about. So we'll have to do a follow-up interview a couple of years down the road and see where Shine On is taking everything. So let's give a special shout out to your wife, Ellen, and our friends at the Tim Tebow Foundation for connecting us. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't also just mention, you mentioned Joanne in the beginning, just as introductions, and she's been a wonderful part of our family. In fact, the way that we met her was that she babysat our kids. And the reason we wanted to bring her back, as a babysitter is because she actually connected with Davis, and Davis responded well to her. She actually worked with special needs kids in that area in DC for a period of time, even at the young age of 15. So, but something terrible, tragic happened with her mother, and that was her parent figure. And when she passed, and Joanne was left to be determined for her where she would go. But it was like not even a question. It was like, yes, we want you in our life. Will you have us? She lived with us until roughly 18 years old, and then it was up to her what she wanted to do. And that's when we actually moved back to Jacksonville. And at the time, she didn't come with us, but she is here now. She's been here now for a number of years and actually works at the group home that Davis lives at, which is a beautiful thing. None of that's accidental. So she still is big sister to Davis. She gets to love on him every day, and that gives us peace beyond our understanding. So I just thought I'd share that because that's been a beautiful part of everything. And her little guy Jace, who's ironically 4 days older than my youngest son Donovan, which is a whole nother funny story because one day they may be somewhere, who knows, in a bar telling somebody a joke that this is my nephew who's 4 days younger than me. So do the math on that. But anyway, pretty cool. She's a special lady.
Yeah, well, I thought you were going to say that he would be referred to as the uncle because, if I'm looking at a family tree, sort of, her son, Jace, would be your grandson, potentially.
Correct. That's exactly right. But he's older. It's just so weird. It's funny. I love telling the story because people get a kick out of it. And I also have friends that love calling me a grandfather at 44, which, it can happen.
Well, thanks for sharing. I think it is an important facet of your family and your experience for that matter. So if somebody wants to learn more about the Tim Tebow Foundation or to get information on Special Nation or to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, certainly can feel free to contact me. We do have specialnation.org, but there's also Peace of Heart, POHC.org. I would encourage people to go check out that group home and just all the beautiful things that they're doing. TTF, the Tim Tebow Foundation, that really, really simple to find them, to see the ministries that not only that they have, but the organizations that they support. That's where the spider web thing starts to happen, and you start to see all of the organizations that are out there that are doing amazing work, not only in the special needs community, but in the human trafficking community. And there's just so many different things that place and they are tireless workers for the betterment of humanity. It's a beautiful thing. Hope that helps. And for me, I am more than happy and very responsive to anyone that sees this, that might have questions or whatever. Don't hesitate to reach out. Yeah, I'd be happy to connect.
Mitch, thank you for taking the time and many insights. As a reminder, Mitch is just one of the dads who's part of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor father or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stCenturyDads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Would you please consider making a tax-deductible contribution? I would really appreciate your support. Mitch, thanks again.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, presented by the Special Fathers Network. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for fathers to support fathers. Go to 21stCenturyDads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Also, please be sure to register for the Special Fathers Network bi-weekly Zoom calls held on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stCenturyDads.org.
The Dad to Dad podcast was produced by Couch Audio for the Special Fathers Network. Thanks again to Horizon Therapeutics, who believe that science and compassion must work together to transform lives. That's why they work tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics at horizontherapeutics.com.